Hey Edison students, it's Mark Jones here coming to you. I'll be joining you today for summer camp. Today we'll be learning how to pot a plant, do lava lamps, and we'll hear a story today from Miss Sutton. Should be fun.
And it went like...
Today you will need a water bottle, Alka-Seltzer, water, food coloring, vegetable oil, planting pot, soil, your plant, and your book, A Bad Case of Stripes.
Hi everyone, say hi.
Hi.
My name is Jamil and this is Jameer. He's going to help me today. We're going to do an experiment where you can make your own lava lamp at home using some things that you'll find in your STEM kits, as well as some things that you can use from around the house. So before we get started, there's a couple things that we have to go over. Number one, all STEAM activities should be done with an adult or an older sibling, only if you get your parents' permission or an adult's permission in the home. Second, children should check with a parent or guardian if they need to use household supplies for the experiment. And third, for the experiment, there may be some items in your kit that you may need to reuse, so make sure to keep your kit neat and not to use up all of your supplies in one experiment. All right, ready to get started? Let's do it. So for this experiment, what you're going to need is one flask or a bottle. You'll need some food coloring, water-based. You'll need some Alka-Seltzer. And you'll also need some vegetable oil. Okay? And I'm going to go over what we're going to do first, and then we'll demonstrate it so you can see the results. Okay? So the first step is going to be to fill the bottle mostly with vegetable oil. So you can see I've already done that here. The bottle's already filled with some oil. Secondly, you're going to pour water into the bottle, and you're going to try to fill it up to as close to the top as you can get it with the water remaining. Thirdly, you're going to add your favorite color or food coloring to that bottle, and then you're going to break up the Alka-Seltzer tablets and drop it into the bottle. And from there, you'll be able to sit back and watch your lava lamp take shape. Now, what we're going to be covering, or why this works the way it does, is related to two things. One is called density, and the second is called polarity. So density is a measure of how much space a substance takes up. And so oil and water, which is what we're going to be using in this case, have different densities, which means if I was to put the same amount of oil and water in the same place, water is going to be heavier. And if I mix those two items together, the water is going to sink to the bottom because it's heavy. You believe me? Let's find out. So I have my bottle with my oil, and I have a cup full of water. And from what I just said, if I pour in the water, it being heavier, it should sink to the bottom. Let's find out. So if you can see here, the oil is at the top here, and the water is at the bottom here. Meaning the water has a higher density and is heavier, and it sinks to the bottom of the bottle. Now the question you also may ask is, well, if you poured those two things together, why aren't they mixing? And that has to do with something called polarity. And that basically means that oil and water will not mix based off the polarity of their molecules. One is positively charged, the other is negatively charged. So when you put them together, they actually repel each other, which is why the oil and the water separate. Okay? So now that we've shown that oil and water are not going to mix if I put them together and the water is going to sink, let's put our food coloring inside the mixture. Come on, Jabril, let's put the food coloring in. Ready? All right. So as I put the drops of food coloring in, so as you can see, all of the drops of the food coloring are not mixing with the oil. Okay, I'm going to put a couple more in there, and then we're going to make our lava lamp start moving. All right, that should be good. So I've got my oil, I've got my water, and I've got my food coloring. The last thing that I need to do is break up my Alka-Seltzer tablets and put them inside.
I see a plane. I see a plane. I see a plane.
And now you can see the droplets of food coloring are being shot up to the top and then moving back around like you would see in a lava lamp. And the reason that this is happening is because the Alka-Seltzer is causing bubbles of carbon dioxide or CO2 to be formed, which is displacing the water and causing it to rise. And once it gets to the surface and the bubble breaks, the water falls back down. So this is a really cool way that you can learn about density and polarity and also get to make a lava lamp at home. Have fun, enjoy your summer, and stay safe.
Can't wait to see how your lava lamp turned out. And next we'll have Miss Stephanie from our community garden.
Hi there, it's Miss Stephanie in the garden, and I'm going to show you what to do with your garden kit. So in your kit, you have a plastic pot, and it has two pieces. This piece that has no holes in it, it's going to be the base. So whenever you water your plant, if you have it sitting on your table or somewhere in your house, it won't get wet. So you'll take the pot and set it on the base, and then your soil is in this bag. You might want to add a little bit of water to it if it feels dry. I don't have any water out here, so I'm just going to show you how to put it in. So take your pot, fill it up with soil. You're probably going to get dirty when you do this, but that's how gardening works. Okay? One thing that you don't want to do, and I've seen a lot of people do this, is shove the soil in. Because your plant's roots need some air, and if you pack that in, it'll be so hard that it's hard for the roots to get through. So make sure your soil is nice and light and fluffy, and fill it up to the top. Okay. Set it on its base, and inside the paper bag, you'll find a little baby plant. Okay. Here it is. Now, the green part is the top of your plant, and its roots are at the bottom. Your plant might have a long, skinny root, or it might have a very small root like this. Once you find the root, you want to put the root into the soil. I like to make a little hole with my finger. It doesn't need to be a big hole because its roots are small. You just stick it in, and then gently tuck the soil around the root. But don't cover up the leaves. Let the leaves stay on top. And then when you're done, give it a little bit of water. Anything that spills out should stay right on this tray. And stick it somewhere where you can check on it every day. And whenever the soil feels dry on top, you can pour more water on it. And that's how you plant your plant. If you have extra soil left, you can always take it outside and put it around some plants in a garden.
A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were too many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror, and then she screamed. Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. "Oh my heavens," she cried, "you're completely covered with stripes." This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" "I feel fine," Camilla answered, "but just look at me." "You get back in bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You are not going to school today." Camilla felt relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say, and she had no idea what to wear with those stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came in to examine Camilla. Most extraordinary, he exclaimed. I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, or drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching? No, Camilla told him, I feel fine. Well then, Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me. And off he went. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon, the Knight of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out in stars. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, let's see some purple polka dots. Sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, checkerboard, and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you can change channels on the TV. That night, Mr. Harns, the school principal, called. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream, he said. I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from other parents. They're afraid those stripes may be contagious. Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart? He asked. No, thank you, sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she'd been laughed at enough for one day. Well, yes, I see, Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. I think I better bring in the specialists. We'll be right over. About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young. When the specialists went to work on Camilla, they squeezed and jabbed, tapped, and tested. It was very uncomfortable. Well, it's not the mumps, nor the measles, definitely not chicken pox, or sunburn. Try these, said the specialists. They each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. Take one of each before bed. Then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different, but when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant multicolored pill with her face on it. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called, but this time, instead of the specialist, he brought the experts. Dr. Gord and Mr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. The expert wrote down lots of numbers. Then they huddled together and whispered. It might be a virus, Dr. Gord announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. Or possibly some form of bacteria, said Mr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. Or it could be a fungus, added Dr. Gord. Instantly, Camilla was covered with different colored fungus blotches. Experts looked at Camilla, then each other. We need to go over these numbers again back at the lab. We'll call you when we know something. But the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure. By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist came and claimed she could cure Camilla. Close your eyes, she said. Breathe deeply and become one with your room. Oh, I wish you hadn't said that, Camilla groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was the dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It just keeps getting worse and worse. She began to sob. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. Excuse me, she said. I think I can help. She went into Camilla's room and looked around. My goodness, she said with a shake of her head. What we have here is a bad case of stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen. She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. Here, she said, these might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh, my, no, said the woman. There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I bet you'd like some, wouldn't you? She asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big, heaping plate full of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said. No one likes lima beans, especially me. Oh, dear, the old woman said sadly. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good. And being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she was been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. Wait, she cried. The truth is, I love lima beans. I thought so, the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Said Camilla. Suddenly the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. I'm cured, she shouted. Yes, said the old woman. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had even a touch of stripes again.
Okay, hope you have fun today. I hope you enjoyed yourself. We'll see you tomorrow for our next episode. All right, have a good day.
And it went like